If anyone's thinking about starting a business, choose a business partner that you want to be with shoulder to shoulder, crawling on the ground for 5 years together. And if you can do that, you found the right business partner. And that is literally what we did. We crawled for miles and miles and miles, planting food.
Planting
and
and weeding
meantime,
and harvesting, yeah.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Amber Waves Farmcast. I'm Katie.
And I'm Amanda.
Yeah, let's talk about the early days. Let's go back. Let's look back so we can look ahead.
I think that's something that's, well, for anybody who's built something, newcomers come in and kind of think, well, or say, why isn't this different? Or they just kind of assume that everything is just that way because it's just always been that way. That we've just always had a market and we've always had a staff of 100 and that we've just always had 12 tractors. And I can remember in our first season, this barn, we're so fortunate to, when we were leasing this property, to have this barn. But we had a single outlet. It was like, here's a barn, there wasn't power. The landlord installed one single outlet. So in the summer of that year, we had an extension cord and we plugged in, someone gave us a used carport that we covered with plastic. It later blew away into the trees, you remember. Wasn't to take down. We learned some lessons. But anyway, we had a box fan that we had in the greenhouse to keep the air circulating.
On a 350-foot extension.
Yeah, but then
imagine that for a second, folks.
So far away.
Picture 350 feet of extension cord.
As a person who's been doing Christmas lights for the last 3 weeks.
You know it.
I can exactly picture that.
That's why you're so good at it.
From the early days. And so we would, at lunch, we had a toaster oven. Fun fact about my dad is that he loves like a Goodwill used toaster oven. He's always asking me if I need a toaster. I don't, Dad. I've got we might need one in there. But like the Sparrows love used stuff. But we had a toaster oven in here and we would unplug the box fan just for lunch so that we could warm up our lunch in this toaster oven and then replug in the box fan. So it was like humble beginnings of that first season.
No running water. We were running hoses.
No, we had no running water. We had a hose hooked up to the market on, I guess I'm looking across the parking lot, a 300-foot garden hose that was the only way for us to water. That was a pretty wet year in 2009. And so we watered in the greenhouse, but we had no field irrigation. We ended up with field irrigation by that second season. But it's really that when I think about, I guess you just don't know what you don't know when you're so naive. And we were so young, we're still so young, but to have the audacity to start where we did, on the heels of the financial crisis, you couldn't get credit. You couldn't get a credit card. There was just no money available. And we got really good advice from our friend Daniel Katz, who founded the Rainforest Alliance in our first season. And I know we've said this on the Farmcast before, but he said, don't spend any money on anything. Just like beg and borrow, not steal, but like beg and borrow everything you can. Use things that are used. Just don't spend any money. It was great advice. The other thing he told us was, only do 3 things and do them well for kind of a long time. And then as soon as you do those 3 things, then maybe you can start adding other things, like a fully vertically integrated kitchen. But those were really our guiding principles in those early years. So we just stayed focused. But even in those early years, we were growing so little food in comparison. That first year we were growing on 1 acre. Now we produce on 35 acres. So we probably had a little bit of food to donate, but like only a little to the food pantry, given our scale. The work that we were really focusing on, our first ever program was children's food education, was getting elementary students out into the field. And you and I were leading those field trips ourselves. And now we, of course, have an educational team that does that. But what do you remember from kind of having it be so small and just the 2 of us in those first 3 seasons before we had an apprenticeship program or any staff?
I Well, we were both doing everything together all the time.
Yeah.
So we both did all the bookkeeping, we both wore all hats all the time, all year for multiple years. I think for like the first 3 or 4 years, like all the time doing all the things together, learning together. Also the 1 + 1 = 3 rule we discovered. And we also just had to create all the time.
Yes.
Ideate, create.
Because there were no systems.
No, I mean, I don't.
There wasn't anything.
We barely even knew, let alone like accounting systems, marketing systems, comm systems. It's like also go grow food. So you're like food growing systems. So it's running a business, a nonprofit, and then also growing food. And so I think that all the time, that's what I remember all the time. Like, what do you think? What do you think? Bouncing. So if anyone's thinking about starting a business, choose a business partner that you want to be with shoulder to shoulder, crawling on the ground for 5 years together. And if you can do that, you found the right business partner. And that is literally what we did. We crawled for miles and miles and miles, planting food.
Planting and weeding
meantime,
and harvesting. Yeah.
dreaming, thinking, ideating, what comes next? What if we did this? What if we did that? And then because of the way a farming season operates, and you always point this out, it's very true, you get the opportunity to stop, evaluate, this is like evaluation and planning time, retool, recalibrate, reset, get new equipment, make a season plan. You get to make a season plan again. You get to start over and try something new. So that is what I remember most from the beginning. The other thing about it that I remember is that the way that we were farming was so physically demanding.
Yes.
Because most of the time we were doing it by hand, manual labor. So a lot of moving, lifting, planting, picking, weeding. I mean, everything was body movement all the time. And we were working 18-hour days.
Yeah, really long days.
So it was, it's a young woman's game, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's one of the reasons why then, I think everyone's, decisions people make in their lives and in their business are certainly informed by what people's experiences are. And I think that we, after those first few years of not having really any equipment to speak of, I mean, we did get our first tractor in our second season and a few pieces of equipment, a few implements. We got a chisel plow and a disc harrow. And an arena groomer that we used as a conditioning tool to make beds. But we've really then tried, as we're investing in equipment now, to invest in things that are labor saving, so that we can really keep the labor on things that require a human hand, like picking cherry tomatoes. But we're trying to really eliminate those really drudgerous, hard tasks from people's daily existence. Like the crawling for miles and miles, planting everything.
Yeah, we're trying to eliminate that so that our young farmers can stay with us for many years, so they don't burn out, because burnout's a real thing with that type of labor and that sort of physical demand.
Yeah, that is actually one of the things that can be challenging about farming on this scale. I think, well, there's an argument that farming in this way.
Well, let me stop you right there. What do you mean farming in this way? Let's provide a little context.
Oh, I guess I mean growing mixed vegetables. So growing food for people to eat, as opposed to commodity farming. So growing cotton, soy, corn, wheat. We do also grow wheat, but growing 10,000 acres of something and you're largely in a tractor the whole day, not touching soil. But mixed vegetable production is much more hands-on. Annual vegetables in particular requires people to, plant, weed, and harvest. We're trying to eliminate weeding as much as we can and make it be mechanical. So make it be largely tractor weeding. And there's an argument that growing as many crops as we do, growing 60 crops, isn't the most efficient way to do it. Imagine having 60 children. It's like so many personalities to pay attention to. 5 would probably be more efficient, but having a roadside market and a teaching program, it makes sense for us to do this variety of crops that both as an educational resource and because there's a place for everything. If something is unpopular in the market in a retail context, we'll use it in the kitchen. Like there's just a place there's a place for everything to go. So we have a little bit more flexibility than other growers. But one of the things about growing vegetables on this scale, or growing vegetables at all, but particularly on the scale of, fewer than hundreds of acres, is that there's not equipment that's well situated to do what we do. Like they have these beautiful greens harvesters that I see like on Instagram that are all over California, but that you would do hundreds and hundreds of acres of baby greens, and we do 5 acres of baby greens, and so it ends up being by hand. And so we're always trying to figure out, one of our challenges in the field is how can we match a piece of equipment and the cost of that equipment with the scale of what we're doing and how much labor it would be. So I mean, something we've been talking about for years, and now it just feels like is a no-brainer, is to just get a straw bale shredder so that we don't have to mulch by hand.
Yeah, nice.
So anyway, that's a little too specific for right now. That's like, we'll talk to Amelia about this next week.
Wish list.
Have her give us her wish list of next season. So
I think that to hit on something you said to bring us back and provide a little context, I was recently reminded by one of our colleagues this morning that this coming Friday, is International Soil Day. So I guess now this is like a thing where every day
is International Something Day.
Has a thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad soil has one. That's important.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, when we were learning to be farmers, because we were not farmers before we learned to be a farmer. So A of all, it's proof anyone can learn to do it. And in that year, our mentor, Scott, who we had a lovely conversation with on the Farmcast earlier in the season, taught us that soil that's alive matters. And soil organic matter matters. And I've been thinking recently about when you just said like farms like ours, or the way that we farm, or the way that we teach farmers, like where is our place in the world? We grow food for our community, yes. We are teaching farmers through our apprenticeship program a way of growing food that if they start their own farm, it will also benefit their community and benefit the land that they're stewarding. But can we talk specifically right now, because people are asking me, I hear a lot about regenerative farming, and that's kind of a new word for me. I don't hear a lot about organic farming. I'm hearing a lot about regenerative farming. Are you a regenerative farm? And I've been thinking about that as it relates to soil and training farmers and being vertically integrated and being in the community. And we haven't adopted that formally in our organization by way of certification or consistent way of describing ourselves as that. But can we talk about what regenerative farming is and what we are doing here about it?
Well, when I think of, there's so much discussion about what these words mean, both like, if there's like a TM next to the word, or if you're allowed to just say it, like the words all natural don't actually mean anything because there's not because it's not regulated. What all natural is, but organic is overseen by the USDA. And when I think of organic farming, I mean, we're organic practicing, but not certified organic. I think of it as the absence of something. So it's the absence of chemical fertilizers, or I should say synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. So you cannot use Roundup. You cannot use urea. You cannot, which is a nitrogen fertilizer. You can. It's a list of what you must not do. it's not a proactive list of here's what you do. So it's almost like it's like the abstinence or like sobriety of farming, of like you must not do these things. Whereas I think of regenerative, and there is such a thing as certified organic regenerative, as activities associated with building soil health, with building soil organic matter, with creating environments that are habitable for pollinators. It's investment into investment into your soils, which is certainly what we are doing. I think when we first started talking about regenerative, I guess on the farmer scale, I don't even know how long ago this was, but I always have really associated regenerative farming with carbon sequestration, with carbon farming.
Yes.
And so that's kind of the...
Can you remind people what carbon sequestration is and what you mean by that?
Yes, so I mean using, there are things we think of in the world as carbon sinks, or we don't think of them as carbon sinks, they are carbon sinks. They hold carbon, so we're not emitting more carbon emissions into our atmosphere. So oceans, forests, soils, these are all places that can hold carbon. So our agricultural soils in this country around the world, have tremendous opportunity to be holders of carbon if we treat them in a certain way. Without getting too much into the kind of the nitty-gritty details of how the science works, I think carbon farming and regenerative farming is actually sometimes at odds with organics, because every time we till, so every time we disrupt the soil, carbon is emitted into the atmosphere. So we want to till as little as possible. But because we're not using synthetic chemicals to kill weeds, we have to kill them by tilling. And so that very tillage is actually emitting carbon. And so that's really that's complicated, this kind of complicated relationship, and why this is where no-till farming is really, is anchored in thinking a lot about carbon emissions.
Yes.
So we're kind of, we're certainly not a no-till farm, but we are trying to be as low-till as possible and have invested in expensive pieces of equipment that enable us to till less. And so we're thinking of using our soils to sequester as much carbon as we can. So basically, when the chemical process or the biological process that happens is that when we till the soil, we're introducing oxygen into the soil, which enlivens, wakes up our soil organic matter, the microbes in the soil rather, and they eat soil organic matter at a more rapid rate the more oxygen is introduced into the soil. The byproduct of them consuming that organic matter is carbon, which is then emitted into the atmosphere. And then when they run out of food, they die. So then you kind of have to start all over again. So what we want to manage on the farm is an environment where there's soil microbial life is there, the organic matter is there, they're eating it at a sustainable rate, and we're not introducing tons of oxygen that's burning up all of our organic matter, so there's no more food for the soil microbes, and releasing carbon at the same time. So how it is that we figure this out while also producing crops for people to eat, that's really the challenge. And I think the challenge of our generation and of the next generation of farmers is how do we feed ourselves at scale and have reasonable lifestyles for farmers, where people can have a life and have savings and retire, feed people, take care of our soils, and sequester carbon. Like, that is the challenge. So what equipment do we need to do it? What investment do we need to do it? How can we do it? And at this point now in my career, being almost 20 years in, that issue is really the thing I'm the most excited to work on at scale.
Yes. Yeah. And so in an effort to do that, we've partnered up with the Rodale Institute. And so we're going to be working on scaling apprenticeship training new farmers in this type of farming that we do. They're keen on the no-till method, and they're regenerative farming forward.
I'm excited about this, about our curriculum collaboration, and how we'll be able to kind of work with a research institution of, what are the viable ways to actually do this, to produce food at scale, and then to also keep these environmental concerns top of mind.
Right.
And I think for anyone who's thinking about well, we should all be thinking about feeding people at scale. And I think certainly, the way that the Gates Foundation approaches feeding people at scale is not necessarily the way that I approach it, which is like heavy reliance and investment in GMOs. And what does that mean? And who owns our seed supply? And then who owns our food supply? And then who owns our medicine supply? I mean, so I think that there's some things that are problematic. But when we think about small farms versus huge farms, conventional, organic, whatever. I think if you think about where you go shopping or your hometown, and you think about Amazon, and you think about your local bookstore, and you think about Home Depot, and you think about your local hardware store, and both serve a purpose, and both are important. And maybe you shopped at both of those sorts of stores this week, but the elimination of the small or the loss of small family farms and community farms is like having there be no stores on your downtown Main Street and there's only a Home Depot and an Amazon, which I think we wouldn't want to have happen. And so that's why, there's some trade-offs for efficiency in farming at the scale that we do. But it's important for our lives as people who want to be parts of communities, because what's the point if not to have places where we can go and be joyful and eat food that was grown right here? Like it just, for joy.
For joy. And I think that for folks who do have the opportunity to choose where they buy their food and how to spend their dollars, I mean, not everyone is going to become a farmer. We are committed to growing more farmers. But a way for the consumer to drive that and to encourage more farmers to get into the practice. Only right now, just remind everybody, only 1% of the population in the United States are farmers. And then of that, a small percentage grow the kind of food that we're talking about, the tomatoes, the carrots, food that you eat every day, as opposed to what talked about earlier, the large commodity.
Soy and corn.
For processing into food. Processed food. And I guess if you are a person who's listening to this today, who cares about your environment, who cares about your community, a way for you to participate is to shop at your local farmers markets, to join a CSA. This is something we've been talking about, the Farmcast, all year, is we are here to grow the food and grow new farmers and create an atmosphere where we're getting people excited to be a part of a food community. We're doing that. If you cannot participate here at Amber Waves, but you are somewhere else, you can find an Amber Waves-like farm near you. Excellent. You can shop at a farmer's market. Excellent. You can grow some of your own food. If that's fun for you? Excellent. You can have your kid enroll in a cooking class. Excellent. You can, there are ways to bring the elements of Amber Waves, of things that we've seen successfully educate and bring joy to people. You can find little pockets of that in your life. But I do want to encourage people who are like, I feel so overwhelmed, I'm stuck. I don't know. I'm overwhelmed by climate change. What do I do? You eat food every day. And you spend a lot of money on food. And the way you spend your money on food matters to small producers like us. So I think that that's just a reminder that nobody is helpless in that way, that you can choose. Sometimes you buy things from Amazon, but sometimes you buy local too. And I think that it's not a black and white situation.
No, and I think it's also maybe you don't buy all of your food from a local farmer at a farmer's market, but spend a few dollars there. Go to a farmer's market with a $15 budget and see what you can.
See what happens.
And see and have a thing that becomes your favorite, that's a special thing that you buy locally, even if you're going to, someplace else. If you're going to, a large grocery chain for your other produce. But a little bit does actually matter.
It does. It shifts the spending into local. And I just recently read that 85% of the food grown in this country is from small scale farms. There's a lot of small scale farm activity in the country right now that I know that when we think of small scale, it's 500 acres or less.
If that's the definition, then that. So yeah, I mean, we're teensy, obviously, compared to that 500. But 500 acres is much smaller than the largest organizations in the country. So, or the largest farms in the country.
Okay, so what a year.
What are you grateful for?
You.
Making me blush.
I'm really grateful that we have some supporters by way of donors that really believe in what we're doing. And I think just in any like venture business or nonprofit organization, it takes people. We have the gumption and we're going to get shit done, but it takes people to believe in the people to do it and put up some money to do it. So I'm very grateful to our donors for believing in us and knowing that we're going to deliver on our word and we have big things ahead. What about you? What are you grateful for?
Well, I'm grateful for you also. I think it's really, I like thinking about the early years of the farm when things were just, we were sitting in the same structure, but things were different for us. I mean, we were just so young and kind of didn't know what was ahead. And I think it being in this business partnership with you has been so, well, fun first and foremost, but also educational. That sounds so that sounds really boring. But I think that something kind of happened this year. I think as we're approaching our 20 year, and you and I got to spent more time together this year than we have in previous years on purpose. I mean, you mentioned earlier that in the early years we did everything together side by side all the time, and then there were many years when we were taking on new projects. You know, buying the farmland, taking on the market, opening the kitchen, or we really had to divide and conquer. And so then we just didn't get to work as much together anymore. And so I have loved the intention behind our working together this year, because anytime we finish a conversation, I think, God, that was so fun. There's no one I'd rather talk to about this stuff.
Yeah, totally.
So that's a fun. The Farmcast has been a fun way for us to talk to each other with people listening.
Yes,
but then to also kind of call in the people who've been really important, who are currently and have been really important in the in the formation of the farm. So so I'm grateful for that, and to and to Bill and our team for producing our Farmcast. I'll echo what you said about donors and kind of just say samesies on how much people pitch in and how meaningful that is for us. I think when I look around and see the contributions that our team, like our paid staff, makes every day, it blows me away. I mean, I'm looking behind you. There are dried flower bouquets, and when I see these just little pieces of magic and personality that people bring into the farm, Laura Rose's tinctures and teas, and dried herbal program that exists at the market, and when Fatima puts something new on the menu, and when Megan comes up with a new apparel idea, and Jasmine moves the store around, and the farmers find out a new production method, or they trial something new, or find a new piece of equipment, or we finally have success in growing husk cherries the most efficient way possible. It's just so fun to see all of these kind of just mini explosions all the time of people truly having a joyful time at work. And I think that when we set out to start Amber Waves, we weren't necessarily setting out with the intention of we're going to be a really meaningful employer. But that has actually ended up for me being something that matters so much, is that is being an employer where people can depend on us and we help them take care of their families, and that just makes me so happy, and I'm so grateful for their contributions. It's one of the things that makes Amber Waves be bigger than ever you or I could just ever make it be with just the two of us.
Yes, totally. And I think that is, to give ourselves some credit in that, the reason that's possible is because you and I have made fertile soil for that sort of creativity to come out in every one of our employees. And we are an educational farm, but we are also a hardcore production farm, and we demand a lot of our folks. And because we do, I think what comes up is pride in work, joy in work. Our farm feels like a family. Employees are friends. There is a real bond beyond job. that has materialized because of the way that we have set things up. So I think it's a good I think it's a good model that we should share with other communities too.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes a little bit from the Amber Waves has kind of never felt like a job to me or to us maybe because we started, it was like palling around with your best friend, just doing stuff all day, just like doing projects all day.
Yeah.
It's just kind of that.
Yeah.
But now with 100 people also. So
Right.
yeah, so it always makes me funny when I say I don't even think I would say the sentence, I'm going to work. I'd say I'm going to the farm.
Yes.
It doesn't, and our customers would also say, I'm going to the farm. And that's really,
On our products, it says from our farm.
yeah. So it's really,
Well, I think we've made a case for anyone who's listening to
work on our farm, start our own farms, join our Save Our Soup campaign.
Farm. Yes, farms are the start of really good things.
Yeah.
I think good food, good health, good people, good community, and we've seen the proof in that. It takes time, though. You cannot rush things on a farm, and you've pointed that out in our growing season in this rapid pace of acceleration of tech that we're going through right now. We have the very real reminder every single day that we are participating in a natural system.
Yes, that like a tomato just takes 78 days. It just does.
It just does. So plan accordingly and get excited for when it shows up. So we're living in a natural system and working in a natural system, which I do think brings a tremendous amount of joy, both as farmers and farm operators, but also as folks that are here able to enjoy it. They get to take a break from tech and, do something real.